Hey guys, All in Crypto here, and welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, for another YouTube video. Apologies that this cryptocurrency daily market update is coming out slightly later than normal. I had an issue with one of my cars, and as I'm sure all of you are aware, these things tend to pop up when you least want them to. But that's all sorted now, so we are going to be delivering in this one the daily market update, where we're not only going to look at the crypto space, but we're going to look at the external financial landscape around us, as there's lots of answers to what's happening within the crypto space that lie over there. So that's what we're going to be getting into. We've got a number of interesting things to share with you. We're seeing whales start to net add to their position. We know that there are a number of big whales that continuously add to their position, even when or especially when the price sells off. But as a kind of net, we're seeing whales actually see an uptick. And if you look at what happens on this uptick, certainly what happened last time, typically a rally will follow this. We're also going to be looking at a number of other things. We're going to be talking about the Federal Reserve. They had their FOMC yesterday, their meeting essentially, where they said that they were going to keep interest rates at zero for now. We already knew this, and anybody that watches these updates daily will know that we said they're not going to touch interest rates until they've stopped stimulating the economy. And markets right now, and the downturn that we've seen on the S&P, the NASDAQ, FTSE's doing extremely well today, but we'll talk about that. We're all associated with the scare or the kind of implementation of interest rates and how this will take liquidity from markets. And that, of course, has an impact, and the fact that some money, big money, that can afford to play the kind of macroeconomic game may look elsewhere for yields or safer returns than risky assets. And crypto is risky, tech is risky. There's a correlation there. So we'll get into it all. Let's start by looking at the overall market. Bit of a downtick today. We saw an uptick yesterday, but we did say it was nothing to write home about. Certainly on the smaller term timeframes, we are still in a downtrend, and we need to break that. We need to set up structure before we confirm a proper reversal. What you're seeing right now is a lot of uncertainty in the crypto space as a whole. Lots of people are speculating on a number of different things. Lots of calls for Bitcoin going lower based on this kind of head and shoulders that people are calling for. I don't think that that's the case. I think that's too obvious for that to play out. And remember, just because there is a head and shoulder, and there is a head and shoulder apparent here, albeit squint, that would have a downside target. I'll do it very, very quickly for you. If you call this your neckline, potentially, some people are drawing the head and shoulders like this, so they're saying it's kind of skewed, and in actual fact, you know, that gives you a lesser downside. So if you do your head and shoulder from the break, you know, people are calling for sort of 29k, or from this one, for example, they're calling for significantly lower. Now, I don't think that's going to play out. Reasons being is simply because, you know, 23 sort of case. So people are calling for Bitcoin potentially coming down into this kind of a range. I don't think that that's the case. I think we've seen a lot of market adjustment already. Markets overreact constantly. They are extremely strong in the sense that, you know, any kind of a little micro change. For example, the Federal Reserve are talking about upping interest rates. They came out yesterday and essentially said, look, they're going to do it by 0.25%. That doesn't solve anything, and that certainly doesn't get rid of inflation that is at 7% currently and significantly higher if you look at the shadow stats. Yet markets saw huge downside as a result of that across the board as people got spooked, and that's kind of natural. You know, people don't want to be in risky assets if they think there's turmoil ahead. So people are calling for this as a head and shoulders to play out. I don't think that's the case. I think Bitcoin, you know, potentially is going to consolidate before we see continuation to the upside. I'm ultimately exceptionally bullish on Bitcoin on the macro, and I'll explain why towards the end of the video. I'll quickly explain why now. Ultimately, I listened to a Zero Hash interview yesterday. Zero Hash is a company that provide crypto services for institutions, and they were saying that a trend that they are seeing, and I've mentioned this time and time again, whether it be 300 banks or 200 small banks in the US looking to introduce crypto services to their customers, they're essentially saying that one reason institutions and banks are going to turn towards crypto is because they're noticing a huge amount of their the people that use the bank actually taking money from that bank into crypto associated exchanges and so on and so forth. And that's a trend that's got these guys going, okay, well, why don't we catch this trend? Because it's an alarming number for them. So what you're going to see into the future, I might as well explain why I'm so bullish. One reason why I'm so bullish on crypto is you're going to see cryptocurrency exchanges offer banking services, and banking services offer crypto products and services. That's all still to come. That drives a huge amount of adoption and really takes crypto mainstream. It's a huge driver of that. That is all still to come, which is why I play more of a long-term game. I look on the macro, and I think Bitcoin and crypto as a whole looks absolutely beautiful and is going to continue to do so. We're still very early on the journey that we're yet to really take part on or venture on. So, of course, Cardano followed suit. We're still very bullish on Cardano. We're still bullish on Ethereum, but it's going through its own sort of problems at the moment. They're also rebranding from ETH2 to something else. I can't quite remember what it is. Markets saw an uptick undoubtedly yesterday due to the fact that the Fed said they're going to keep interest rates at 0 and says hikes appropriate soon. We told you they're going to wait till March when they've stopped stimulating the economy. It would be completely counterintuitive for them to, really go against the grain. So they're trying to lower one thing before they up another, rather than really just throwing everyone into a disorderly fashion. And this was really the main news. A couple of takeaways. They did say they were going to up it by 0.25%. 4 rate hikes a year would give us 1% up in interest rates, which is huge on a macro level, but it certainly doesn't do anything for a 7% inflation. Inflation, typically what they have aimed for year on year is about 2%, so you're still losing to inflation. This is where Bitcoin steps in and really highlights, and I've always said this, Bitcoin and crypto has never been so relevant. The reason being is because inflation isn't going anywhere. They could, if they up interest to 7%, the entire economy would completely implode. If they upped it by 5% also, they can't, they're in this, they're walking a tightrope, the Federal Reserve and banks around the world, to try and not completely destroy their economies, but at the same time, do something about inflation because it's destroying the bottom 40% of Americans and 40% of people across the world. 40% of Americans don't even have £1,000 in savings. Now, I would argue a lot of that is due to a lack of financial education, which is why this channel exists. And by financial education, I don't mean go to school and learn about it. I mean, nobody's told them how money works and how the system kind of works. They've essentially are playing a game that they don't know the rules to, and that's what we try and do on this channel, because anybody can save money to invest. And what I am going to do is a series. It's really going to appeal to the younger generation, but also anybody, because no matter what wage you're on, there are ways you can save money. One massive way is don't go and buy designer clothing and shop in shops that are really high end and try and impress people. That's one way. I've seen so many people go broke trying to stunt. It's one of the stupidest things I've ever seen. But that's a complete side note away from the update that we're trying to give. Morgan Stanley, Barclays say UK stocks are looking cheap and can weather risk-off period. We're seeing that with the FTSE. So the FTSE's seeing a lot of strength. It's not really risky stocks within the FTSE. There are a few, but it's largely travel and leisure, which has been significantly down given the situation that took place in March 2020, which caused a lot of them to shut down and there was no revenue coming in and so on and so forth. So these are seeing a little bit of a more of a positive vibe than something like the S&P and certainly the NASDAQ, which has a lot of risk on stocks attached to it. But I do expect them to uptick today in association with the FTSE. Let's look at the next little bit of data. This is from Will Clement. Absolutely brilliant guy to follow on Twitter. We always give him a shout out and often look in our daily market updates at some of the data that he presents, because on-chain data may not always be correlated in sync. And what I mean by that is, there may be some really bullish on-chain data, but the price may go down, but eventually it gets realized. And this is a really interesting chart that I've got for you here. Whales are finally adding to their Bitcoin holdings after distributing since September, a trend to keep an eye on that bulls want to see continue. And you can see when you have an uptick here, typically, and remember we have had upticks previously, but what he's drawn here is a trend line essentially. If we continue to see this uptick, it typically signals a recovery and that, you're going to see the price rebound. Whether that's just a dead cat bounce or not is yet to be discovered, but certainly an interesting chart that it has a little bit of a bullish essence to it. This is from The Root, The Rational Root. Bitcoin making a macro bottom, short-term hodler supply indicates a macro bottom compared to low of 2014, 2015, 2018, and 2019 bear markets. An opportunity that doesn't occur often. Absolutely. And this is, I actually think that there's a lot of crypto out there that's significantly undervalued. And the reason they're undervalued is because they've had a complete wet the bed moment due to the macro kind of scarce of things, all related to the Federal Reserve, which we've been talking about for 3 months now. A lot of YouTubers out there are only starting to mention it over the past week. Subscribe to this channel, guys. We will keep you in the right direction, and we will be as honest and upfront as possible with you. And that's, all I can really give, and we can give you our kind of macro take. So this is interesting. On-chain data across the board looks extremely bullish. The price may not be painting the same story. And this is, what I really think the future looks like. We're going to have banks start to offer cryptocurrency services. The price will be a lot higher when that's officially announced. That's something I think is coming. Not financial advice, just my own personal opinion. What I'm doing, I'm continuing to buy crypto throughout this dip in the same way that I have been for 5 years, and it's paid off for me massively. And in actual fact, you have a downtrending market like this, where a lot of people are losing money. Head over to my Twitter. We're putting on short-term trades on things like ADAX that made us literally 40% yesterday. And I still have that position on because I'm still expecting more upside. There's opportunities everywhere in the crypto space, whether that be NFTs, whether that be short-term trades that are fundamentally driven based off news and so on and so forth. You've just got to go out and look for them. And this space, in my opinion, will absolutely recover, and we will go on to see new all-time highs. You don't have big banks and institutions across the world all moving towards getting into the crypto space because they think that this is going to be a disaster. In fact, the opposite. BlackRock filing for a Bitcoin ETF or a blockchain ETF, I should say, a spot blockchain ETF, is huge. The largest asset fund manager in the world. They don't do that in a space or a commodity, which everything inherently is a commodity until it's proven to be a security, except for a few things, a few weird things. They don't do that if they think that this is going to be a zero-sum game and they're not going to make any money out of it. And the reason they'll make money out of it is because people want to use it, they want to buy it and interact with their services, and so on and so forth. All I have for you in the video, guys. I'm going to love and leave you on that note. If you've enjoyed the content, like is always appreciated. So is a comment, and I'll catch you all in the next YouTube video. Thank you very much for watching.